The centre position has seen many great players from Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell in the 60s to Hakeem Olajuwon and Shaquille O'Neal in the 90s and 2000s. But ever since the early 2000s, the big man position has slowly become extinct. The last time a centre won the MVP award was in the year 2000 when Shaq won it. But this year, we might see that change with Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic, who are looking like frontrunners for the MVP this year. But as you can tell by the title, I want to see who's better, so let's get into it. Firstly, let me start by saying, if you asked me this same question last season, my answer would be Jokic and it wouldn't have even been close. But Embiid has turned it up this season and now I feel there's a genuine debate. So let's start by comparing both players' stats. Both players are averaging insane numbers, but Jokic takes the slight edge, and I really mean slight edge. He's averaging 0.2 more rebounds than Embiid and shooting 2.4% better from the field, 0.4% better from free and 2.2% better from the free throw line. The difference between these players is so marginal, it's insane. The biggest differences are in points where Embiid averages 3 more and assists where Jokic averages 5 more, but like I said, both players are amazing stat-wise. Now let's take a look at each player's achievements this season so far. Jokic has had 1 50-point game, 2 40-point games, 7 30-point games and 7 triple-doubles. He's also had 13 games where he's had 10 or more assists. Embiid, on the other hand, has had the same number of 50 and 40-point games, but has had 10 30-point games. He's also had 8 games where he grabbed 12 or more rebounds and 4 games where he grabbed 15 or more rebounds. Now with the stats out of the way, let's talk about their first category, value. Jokic has led his Nuggets team to the 7th seed in the West with a record of 16 wins and 13 losses. Nothing great, but the West is very dense in competition. And if you compare that to the Sixers, who are 20 and 10 and the 1st seed in the East, you can see that Embiid has led his Sixers team to a better record. But if the Nuggets were in the East instead of the West, they would be the 4th seed in the East instead of the 7th. That shows you how much better the teams are in the West. But we're looking at value, so how do we really measure it? Well, one simple way to do that is to see the team's record when each player does and doesn't play and compare them to see whether the team suffers without that player playing. The problem with this is that Jokic has played every game this season, so we can't see the difference in record if he does or doesn't play. I will say that Embiid's Sixers have won 1 game and lost 4 when Embiid doesn't play, so he really does make a difference. But the other way you can measure this is by a player's plus minus. Plus minus reflects how the team did while that player is on the court. If a player has a +5 plus minus, it means the team outscored the opponent by 5 points while he was on the court. If he has a -3 plus minus, then the opposing team outscored his team by 3 points while he was on the court. What's good about this stat is that the player doesn't have to be directly involved for this stat to be good. For example, if Embiid sets a screen for his teammate who then scores because of that screen, Embiid doesn't get credited for that on the stat sheet, but he affects the game while on court. So what are their plus minuses? Well, Jokic has an average plus minus of 5.55 this season compared to Embiid, who's an average of 7.83, so Embiid is technically more valuable to his team than Jokic is. Now let's look at offense and defense. Firstly, offense. I'm going to break down each player's strengths offensively and any weaknesses they may have. So let's start with Jokic. Jokic is a phenomenal offensive player, averaging 27 points. He has no problem scoring the ball. His shooting numbers back this up as he shoots 57% from the field, 40% from free and 87% from the line. Jokic can really do it all offensively, being a great 3-point shooter and amazing in the paint. But not only that, in the mid-range, Jokic has developed a fadeaway which he can shoot over anybody, and we saw it a lot in the Western Conference Finals last year. If you look at his shot chart, he shoots better than league average from most, if not all, spots on the floor. But his offensive game is not just limited by scoring. He's one of the best playmakers and passers in the league, averaging 8 assists per game, which is 5th in the league. He averages more assists than LeBron, Chris Paul and Damian Lillard, just to put his stats into context. But what about Embiid? Embiid averages 30 points per game, and if you look at his shot chart, he's more of a diverse scorer, which took me by surprise, and what surprised me even more is the fact that he shoots amazing from pretty much every spot on the court. He shoots very similar to Jokic on 54.7% shooting from the field, 40% from free and 85% from the line. Embiid is not much of a playmaker compared to Jokic, as he averages 3 assists. There's also an offensive stat we can use to compare these players, which is called offensive rating. Offensive rating is simple, it's just how many points a player would score in 100 possessions. The higher the rating, the better the player is offensively. Jokic has an offensive rating of 130.6 compared to Embiid, who has an offensive rating of 125.4. Again, these players are very close stats wise. But overall, I would say the edge goes to Jokic in this category because he's slightly better in stats and he also has a signature shot which is reliable. He doesn't just use it once and forget about it, he's consistent with it. Jokic is also one of the best playmakers in the league, which is remarkable for a big man. I will say both players are very amazing offensively. Jokic just takes a slight edge in my book despite Embiid being a very versatile scorer, but then again, Jokic is versatile too. Now let's look at defense. Defensively, Jokic averages 1.7 steals and 0.7 blocks, compared to Embiid, who averages 1.3 steals and blocks. So they're even. We had the offensive rating stat for offense and now we have the defensive rating stat for defense. This is how many points a player allows to be scored on them per 100 possessions. So the lower the rating, the better the defense. Jokic has a defensive rating of 108.6 and Embiid has a rating of 104.8. So Embiid is better defensively. But that's the furthest you can really take this defense, besides the eye test and watching them play. Personally, I would give the edge to Embiid, especially if you look at the eye test. He's a brute force in the paint, but again, these players are quite close. Jokic might not look like a big man you'd be scared of, but he will steal the ball from you and block you a few times. So overall, who's better? Well, immediately at face value, stats wise, Jokic is better. But then, when we looked at value, Embiid took that category. Then we looked at offense and defense and each player took a category there too. So they're dead even really. It's up to you now to formulate your own opinion and decide who you want. Do you want Jokic who can score and play make, or do you want Embiid who can also score but can lock down the paint better? Personally, I can't decide. I really like Jokic and his style of play. The unselfishness and versatility in his game makes him exciting to watch. But Embiid has really improved this season and he can do everything Jokic can do besides playmaking. I cannot express how close these players really are, and I'm not mad if you think Embiid's better or if you think Jokic is better, because it can go either way. But that's just what I think. If you think differently, please let me know in the comments below. If you like this type of content, then you should follow me on TikTok, where I make this content but just at a faster pace. The link will be in the description. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe, it'd help me out a lot. But that's all from me, and I'll see you in the next one.